The Joyful Friar podcast is made possible by the generous support of our friends. To support the podcast, please visit nathan-castle.com and donate today. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Joyful Friar podcast. I'm your host, Father Nathan Castle. And today I have the great honor of bringing to you people I love very much who share this ministry with me. I generally refer to them as prayer partners when we're doing this common work. We're on a Zoom call with 6 boxes of our faces smiling at you. I'm going to ask each person involved to speak up a little bit and tell us whatever it is they want us to know that would help you to be a little better acquainted. So, Cathryn, you're going to go first.
Okay. Hello, I am Cathryn Castle-Garcia, and I have been Father Nathan's baby sister my whole life. We have the same parents and grew up in the same household in Texas. And in addition to being one of Nathan's prayer partners, I'm also his dive buddy. I'm a scuba diving instructor, and I love taking Nathan on scuba dives whenever we have the opportunity.
And you've also been the editor of all 3 of my books, and we're working on a 4th book, a 3rd one in this Afterlife Interrupted series, right?
Yes, I've gotten to be your writing coach and editor and publisher, and it's been a great pleasure.
Great. Well, it's fun to be able to collaborate again. So somebody go next. Don't be shy.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm David Wright, and I've been retired for about 5 years. My whole life, I was a dentist. I joined here with Nathan about 3.5 years ago.
And for 3.5 years, I haven't known what to call you, David or Dave, because you seem to use them interchangeably.
Yeah, Dave is fine.
All right, Dave is fine. Mm-hmm. You heard it from Dave. And where are you?
In Buffalo, New York.
Right, when you're not on a cruise ship in Antarctica, because for much of the last year, we were trying to patch you in from wherever you are in the world.
It actually worked too.
And it did. We helped people very long distance, but that didn't cause any problem at all. How about I call on Lisa?
Well, hello. I have known you, Father Nathan, for about 25 years, and I'm in Phoenix, actually in Tempe. I am a community organizer, I'm a researcher, and I enjoy engaging with people from all walks of life. Been involved in a number of community projects, from founding a nonprofit to working with veterans and pregnant moms and everybody in between. And I've been married for 13 years, and we have a lovely and energetic daughter who's 10. And I'm also a life-professed Dominican laity, and my family and I are soon to be respite foster care parents.
Sweet. Would you tell people a little bit about Maggie's Place? Because you have some experience of people on this plane who have been through trauma, and you've been a part of helping people put together a different version of their life after trauma.
Yeah, I was so grateful to be part of a co-founding group of 5 women in my early 20s that we began Maggie's Place, which is a home for homeless expectant mothers. And it was modeled after Dorothy Day's notion of house of hospitality. So we welcomed women into our home and lived with them and worked with them and learned with them. And now I have the great opportunity to walk with my daughter and the women. We do volunteer work on about a weekly basis with some of the women that are currently in Maggie's Place. So 23 years later, it's a very full circle, and very grateful to be a part of that. And you were actually our spiritual director for that early on, and that's how we got to know you.
And I remember telling you, I think the hardest part is going to be the living together, because you and 4 other young women chose to live together in community and welcome people into your home. And I've lived in community all my life. Ministry is a lot easier than community.
Absolutely. We grew a lot of emotional muscle, a lot of learnings, and very grateful for that experience for sure.
Well, thanks for that, and for allowing our audience to get a little peek into that part of your life. Yes. So, Karen, how about you go next?
Well, hello, I'm Cathryn Saliba. I've known Father Nathan maybe 4 years now, almost. and I'm a psychoanalyst, and I do mostly couples therapy these days. I'm a mother of 2 daughters, 27 and 25. I am a pickleball addict, confessed, whatever. And I love doing this work with Father Nathan, and I think you know almost my whole family, pretty much. My sister, my brother, everybody.
Yeah, it was through your brother that we met at all, and then
Right.
I've become good friends with your sister also.
Right.
So yeah, and then on the screen it looks a little like the Brady Bunch with that there's only 6 and not 9, but right across from you on the screen that I'm looking at is Dave, who's the dentist in Buffalo, and you've been his partner most of the time.
Yeah, we've been partners like 3 years, right, Dave?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, and then that leaves us with the dynamic duo of the Quinns. So Linda, so that you get a word in edgewise, why don't you describe a little bit of who you are and who's next to you?
I am a program manager for a program that helps get men and women back into the workforce. And alongside with that, I wear another hat where I teach in psych rehab, which I find that extremely enjoyable. I teach alternative coping skills. And then also Michael and I have been hospice volunteers for maybe 20 years, Michael? Yeah. And we co-authored 2 books together for the terminally ill and their loved ones. You may have seen these. You might hold that one up. Hold that one into the camera.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
The first
The
one.
journey home.
Yes. And here's the second one. Yeah.
So Michael, sound off.
Well, I'm humbled by the introductions that everybody else gave. I've been responsible for cutting our lawn for the last 10 years that I've been retired, and that's just about it.
Well,
But
prior to that,
well, I met Father 4 years ago at the annual conference of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. We were on the same panel. I was talking about one of our books having to do with assisting the actively dying at the time of transition. And of course, Father was talking about Afterlife Interrupted. And afterwards, he asked me if I would consider being a prayer partner, and I was skeptical. To be honest with you, it's my background is Catholicism, my foundation, and if Father had been anybody other than a priest, I probably would have said no. But I was drawn enough into Father's aura and what he displays to people that I decided to take a chance. And we started right away, right there at the conference. We did 3 sessions, and I haven't looked back. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
And would you say my aura is very, very compelling?
I would say I'll quote you in one of your books, and that is that why does a particular soul come to you? And you said, or the soul said, because his light was on.
Yeah, I like that one.
And his light is love. And so that's the light that I saw.
Well, what a sweet soul you are. You say the sweetest things. That was a phrase that my mom used to use. You remember that, Cathryn? Oh, you say the sweetest things.
Yes, indeed.
Well, the way I remember it, Michael, you and I were on a panel at the IANS convention when it was in Metro Philadelphia several years ago. Right. And they gave us each, I think, were there 4 of us? So we each had 13 minutes.
4 years ago.
It was 4 years ago. We had 13 minutes that we could present our topic. And then after we were all done, there was a little Q&A and the hour was over. Okay. Anyway, I just said, why don't we just go to my room and we can do a session? And we did that kind of pretty quickly. And did we help several? Did you say we did 3 different crossings?
We did 1 that day, and I was so emotionally and physically and spiritually exhausted that I couldn't do anymore. And we did 2 the next day.
Okay. Well, it happens that when we're together at the IANS meeting this year in 2023 in Arlington, Virginia, that we're going to share a story that we took part in that day.
That's right.
And I've already gotten the permission from that person to do that. So we will regale this year's IANS convention attendees with that story that I think will be, I hope it will be touching and compelling. Good. Well, I'd like to give people some sense of how we go from not knowing each other or knowing each other in different ways, like a friend. And Lisa was a college student. I was her campus pastor, and Cathryn has already identified herself, as she's want to do, as my baby sister. So we've known each other in roles that were different from this work. What was it like to move into this work?
It was interesting because when I first learned of this piece, that the talking with folks and even talking with saints or others that passed, the angels, it caused me to pause for a moment, and I had to sit and contemplate what happened. And it was a little bit of an awe, but the experience up even through this time has always been wisdom filled and peaceful. And now even though it is a little more commonplace, it's something that I personally don't ever want to take for granted, because even though it is a little less unusual, there is such beauty in the communication.
Mm-hmm. And even though it has this, psychic or paranormal or phenomenological, whatever you want to call it, content or means, doesn't it make you just walk away from it and see other ordinary things in your life with a sense of awe or wonder?
Well, it does, and it informs my life now, and it teaches me lessons, teaches me how to keep things in perspective. And it was although unusual, now it's just as if I was talking to someone sitting across from me. And one of the most unique pieces is how interactive the folks are that we speak with. They are rooting for us here. They want to be our advocate. They want to be in our corner. They want to be a friend, when it comes our time to pass. And that just was something that just opened my eyes quite a bit.
Yeah, you have friends in high places.
Yes.
Cathryn, how would you answer that? How did we get started doing this particular work together?
Wow, it's been so long. The one that I remember the most was we were working not with the idea of having any of the books published. We were just doing the work of helping what we identified at the time was stuck souls. And now we've learned that they're not necessarily stuck, but we started out obviously in prayer and seeing how we might help, and then learning that it was as simple as asking a departed, who can you think of who loved you or you loved that might have gone before you? And it was like a Shazam, that's all we really need to do is tap into the universal love and the love that lives on forever, of having loved someone who's now an ancestor, and they know the way. So all we have to do is kind of a little bit of a reminder, really. I think it's just helping people remember who they loved, and then the helpers show up. So,
yes.
And in some instances, it might be not a family member or a direct ancestor, but an elementary school teacher or the school nurse or someone that they knew from a younger time in their life, or maybe just a volunteer who's a loving soul who's departed. So
I remember I've been at this about 27 years, I think, and early on it seemed like it was almost uniformly elementary school teachers, coaches, Boy or Girl Scout leaders, church members, neighbors, a lot of childhood experiences that people drew upon.
yes, a lot like what Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers said his mother taught him, look for the helpers. And there are so many universal helpers out there that we never have trouble finding them.
No. Somebody else.
I'll go. Nathan.
Yeah, please.
I was on a lot of Afterlife podcasts. After my mom passed away, I wanted to find out everything about the afterlife. And I came upon Nathan on one of them. I heard him, I said, well, that sounds pretty neat. And about the fourth time, I finally decided that I would contact him. And I took this course that he had developed. took the entire course, and at the end of the course, he offered a Zoom to me to answer any questions. And I said, well, you need somebody else to help you. And he said, yes. And that's how I started.
Yes. And when I bring somebody new aboard, I usually call it a ride along and have you ride along with somebody that has some experience doing it. And as I'm looking at my screen, it's immediately to the left is Karen, who I think didn't I just say, would you mind if Dave joins us?
Yeah, that's how you brought it up.
Yeah.
And I had been a part of Michael and Linda's.
Yes, you were right along with them. Yeah. How would you, what would you have to say about your early experiences of doing this, Karen?
I was raised Catholic and then had switched over and went to seminary and became a therapist. And my parents were both dying in 2020. And I got a hold of Father Nathan's books through my brother, and I just devoured the books. And at the end of my mom's life, she said the thing that a lot of people say, even though she's a person of faith, we all die alone. I said, I don't think so. Doesn't really seem that way anymore. And so we had a really nice talk about that. And in the end, she said, well, maybe I could be there for you when you die. And it was just the sweetest moment of my life. And so that's how I got involved working with you. But Michael threw me into the deep end at the beginning, because I think I did one ride along where somebody famous came, which was awesome. But then Michael goes, I think Karen should take this one. So on the second one, I was like in the lead. And so there was no time to get nervous or anything. I just, he just said go, and I went.
All right. Well, Michael, do you remember it that way? Throwing her in the deep end?
Oh, I remember. Well, I didn't throw her in the deep end because she came across instantly as so vibrant and full of love that I have this thing that I've developed over the years, and that is, it's been a transition from, I read vociferously. I read hundreds and hundreds of books, and they're all nonfiction because I need to know the meaning of everything and how things work. But as I get older, and I think this is part of the work that I've done with you, Father, it's more and more less meaningful to know about the meaning and rather just to bathe in trust. And so in working, for example, with Karen and the way she came across, it wasn't anything like, gee, is she going to be able to do this or she isn't? She just instantly radiated something that I defined as trust, and I let it go. And that trust is becoming more and more the main focus of my life in the 74 years that I've been on Earth.
Well, I think it's deepened my work with the terminally ill, for sure. And I think the journey that we take is not so much about death as it is about life and the next life. And what I essentially got from the whole thing is that there's no rush. There's no rush. There's no need to rush.
Yes.
Why? Because we're eternal creatures. Is that why?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no rush. We'll all get there. Just how fast you want to go.
How fast do you want to go?
I'm going as fast as you can take me.
Oh, well, he keeps wanting you to retire, but you won't. I hear that a lot.
No, I won't.
You enjoy what you're doing, helping people too much to help him cut the grass, apparently.
And Linda always has that smile. She's always upbeat. He said something that I thought was very profound, and that was, if they don't allow me to laugh in heaven, then I don't think I want to go there.
Amen to that.
I thought that was so profound. It's taking it, not taking life so seriously as we all, particularly in these times that we live in, we're just challenged to be able to sit back and not take things so seriously and trust that there's an agenda out there that divine intelligence is in charge of, and we're just going to ride right along with it.
Well, when I had a helper team, some of you were on it, to imagine launching a podcast and calling it the Joyful Friar, which is a nickname of Saint Dominic, the founder of the order I belong to, and Elisa does. But when we consulted with a team of people that help people launch podcasts, and there was one woman we were working with that just said that name won't work. You're talking about death and joy. Nobody's going to understand that. So yeah, I'm with you. If I don't even need to put it the way Luther did about if there is laughter in heaven. I think it's one big belly laugh. I think that's about all there is joy that often gets expressed beyond words, and laughter is one of the ways that we express emotions that are beyond words. So somebody take it from here. Another possible way to go in this part of the show is, can you remember a particular crossing story that has stayed in your mind, touched you? Maybe it's one of the ones that we can speak more explicitly about because they're already in the books, or maybe a little more indirectly about one that we haven't gotten permission to talk about. Can you think of one of these stories that just fills your heart with joy?
So this is not one that's in the books, but I'll call him Sergeant. And Sergeant came to us because he had been a journalist in the war, and it seemed like World War II. And he was basically a witness to a horrible death of somebody who stole a piece of chewing gum from like a bunkmate. And that person was murdered because of it. But Sergeant had to cover everything up. And it was sort of couched in these terms where he would have to write things in a certain way so that the enemy wouldn't get an advantage. But it was really basically to do this huge cover up of certain atrocities that happened within, companies. And so it had this really sad part to it. But Sergeant had passed away at a later time in his life, and he just lived with this lie his whole life. And he had crossed over, but he came to us because he was going to help some people cross over who had basically been in the chaos of war at one time or another, and had lived with shame and lies for what they had done or didn't do during their time in the military. And so the really cool thing at the end of Sergeant's story is that he was going to have a truth parade. And so he had a whole bunch of people. Father Nathan talked about this parade of people that were ready to cross over, and they had banners and they had a band, and they all got to have this reunion of people walking down this road or street, and it was called the Truth Parade. And I think back on that one a lot because just the Truth Parade goes through my mind a lot, just in the work that I do, and people, the light and the truth. And so that was one of the ones that really stuck with me.
The way I remember that one, part of what he was a journalist, or at least a writer for the military, and no family wanted to get a letter saying that their loved one died over a stick of gum. And so that he was asked to write a letter saying that, your loved one, died defending his country or something like that.
Right.
And but it still sat wrong with him to be asked to say things that weren't true, even if there might have been some construct to legitimize it. That's the way I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't remember the parade. Who else was in that parade? Was it military folk or
you know who was in it? Was the angel Gabriel at the beginning. He came to be, he was sort of the guardian angel of Sergeant, and he explained how that protective prayer that we use and protection is so vital and so important.
Yes.
And then he went on to explain how he sits in protection of us and of these people too. Because you got a phone call during that recording, your recording stopped. So I don't know who came to help them help Sergeant go, but I think it was the angel Gabriel.
Okay. Yeah, just for our audience, I use an iPhone and an app on it that records everything. And then when the session is finished, I just hit send, and it goes into the cloud, and it gets turned into a Word document, transcribed. But I learned by hard experience that if I get a phone call during a session, it interrupts that app, and I have to go back into it and tell it to keep recording. And unfortunately, I guess we lost a piece of that one.
Yeah,
But you remember it.
I do.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. How about somebody else? Is there one that has stayed in your heart and your mind?
I'll go. One of my most favorite experiences was a very young man who died a tragic, unexpected death that was filmed on a jumbotron in an arena. And he was very angry because he, in the way he explained it, got squashed like a bug, and everybody saw it happening, and it got replayed over and over again before they could stop it, because of the arena in which he died was so public. And he was really mad. He was very young. He didn't have anyone that he knew that had died before him. So our asking him to reach out to a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle, he didn't have anyone. And it took quite a long while to make a connection. And he just wanted to swear, and he wanted to swear and swear and swear. And he went through an exhaustive list of swear words about how angry he was before we finally connected him with someone who happened to have also died a very tragic death that was filmed. And that individual was a famous individual whose death gets replayed every year. They died in a racing accident, and you can't have that race happen again without the repeat of the tragic accident. And he showed up and said, "You think you're the only one who died a tragic death that everybody got to watch over and over and over again? Watch this." And we both energetically got to see him projecting that into our experience. And the young man was like, "Oh, okay," kind of like, "You win." we're both dead, but you're more dead. And he became quiet and humble about, yeah, your death was a big winner. And the famous individual said, "I get it, buddy. We're on the same team, you and me. So I know you're mad, but let's, you and me, just shuffle off. And I know a place where we can go, and you don't have to be happy. You can be as mad as you are right now, but I'll go there with you, and we can just slide off. These folks have done enough, and I'll take you down the road to where you need to go." And it was just so sweet for someone to come in and say, "Enough already. Yes, you squashed like a bug, but you're not a bug, and you know you survived your death. So let's, you and me, get over all your swear words and go talk about something else. Let's not talk about how you got squashed like a bug. Let's just go relax and enjoy one another." And it was very sweet. And they both have stayed in my prayers over the years. This is a number of years ago. And they both are people that not only do I pray for their continued afterlife, happily ever afterlife is what I call it. I hope you're having a happily ever afterlife. But I also ask them to ride along with me energetically if they're of a mind where they want to be around me and help me live a happy, joyful life, that they're invited to ride along with me. And oftentimes I get a little bit of that. I can get a sense that they're just checking in to say, hey. So
That's
it
great.
blesses my life.
It might surprise people that that because people often, I intentionally not use the word heaven in these books. Afterlife just seemed to be broader than heaven, which might come with rules that include no swearing. And it just looks like the work that we do accommodates people where they are, but then they're not allowed to just spin their wheels indefinitely, cursing because you're angry. Well, this is a great example of someone coming along and saying, "You want to stop that?
Enough already.
Yeah, enough already." Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's a great memory.
What's interesting is the gentleman that you mentioned, Cathryn, he's also shown up in some of the prayer sessions that Father Nathan and I have done. So it was great fun to have him along. But I guess a couple that come to my mind was Bridget, who was bouncy, and she was a young girl. She was lovely. She was 10, and this was a unique one because it was a cluster story. So instead of just one person crossing, there were 25 to 30 people that ended up crossing, and it was led by this girl named Bridget, and that was in your book too. And it was she had a very sweet spirit about her, and she shifted perspective. So which a lot of the people do that we talk with, instead of falling, she fell from a tree, and she shifted her perspective to kind of move to the next stage, so that she thought, well, I can bounce, and instead of falling, I'm going to turn it into a bounce, and I can lead these people, being led by a child. It was a very beautiful story. And then there were a couple of others that come to mind, particularly B, and these were the folks and Bob, the folks that had committed suicide. And I know that you were very thoughtful about whether to put them in the book because they're about a sensitive topic. And so I was really happy to see that those stories that we spoke with folks about, that they have brought about some healing and some just some understanding for people who've lost a loved one from suicide. And so those were probably the stories that come to mind as most meaningful, but each one has incredible joy, and there's a truth in each of them. So it's really hard to pick favorites, certainly, but those are two that come to mind.
Well, because Bridget's story is it's in book 2, isn't it?
Yes.
And her subtitle of her chapter is "You're not dead, just bouncy."
Right.
That's the way she said, all these people that are in this place with me feel like they're at the bottom because they fell, and she needed to get them to not feel like they were on the bottom anymore. That was the reason it was so important to bounce. That yes, she might have hit bottom, but she thought of like bouncy houses at children's birthday parties. And she reminded them too that look at our bodies. They don't break anymore. They don't have bones that break, and they don't have blood that leaks out. The kind of bodies we have now can bounce. So why don't you bounce? So
yeah, and it's such a beautiful lesson for us because it's a need for us sometimes to shift perspective or to see things in a unique light and to be a little lighthearted.
I often quote Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 1. And that says very simply, the day of our death is even more important than the day of our birth. And we all celebrate a birth, but we run from death. It's not something we celebrate. And both through our hospice work and with our work with you, Father, we begin to take on a more celebratory perspective on death, even with the people who died with trauma, that there's a realization that they have now that life is so much more. And having a body and living here on earth is very, very important. And we have a certain obligation because, I believe we are temples of the Holy Spirit, and that's a responsibility to live our life with sacred intensity and purpose, that there's a reason why we're here. And I stress that to people that, even people who talk about near-death experiences, and they're all neat and whatever, but they tend to come back and say what they learned the most was how important it was that we live this life that we have. And that's with sacred intensity and purpose.
Connected. It was easier for me to understand separation from God is just an illusion. And that he's a part of every breath that we take. And that was pretty much what I got from it.
Yeah.
And
Having gone through these experiences over the years, what has stayed with you, or what's changed the way you think about life, or things like that?
I'll go.
All right.
One thing is, even though I can't prove it, I have absolute certainty that we survive our deaths. We all survive our deaths, and we'll all learn that at the moment of our death when we take a breath into the everlasting life. I call it shedding the meat suit and being born into eternal life. So I am very excited at the prospect of having a happily ever afterlife birthday, and that I know I'll be born into eternal life. And I feel certain that what lives on, in addition to our soul self and all of our memories, is love and imagination. And we have the ability in the afterlife to edit our life story and to make a happier ending, like what you were just talking about, is that there, you might have gotten squashed like a bug, or you might have not been able to survive the swift water, but it doesn't mean you can't have a happy ending and then a happily ever afterlife. So those are the things that really stay with me and make me not afraid to move through my life, knowing that there's an X at the end. I'm solving for X and I'm working backward to this now to have a happier today, because I know I will die and I'm certain I'm going to survive it. And that just makes it easier for me to go through whatever comes my way.
Well, you and I were both baptized in infancy. I was baptized at 3 weeks old on April Fool's Day of 1956. And I grew up in a tradition that taught me that Good Friday turns into Easter morning, and does so pretty quickly. And it can be as ghastly as crucifixion, and a betrayal and mobs screaming at you and all of that. But it doesn't matter how traumatic the end was. There's still a happy ending around the corner, and that's not just pious nonsense. It's just the truth.
Exactly.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, on the heels of what Karen said, talking about we are never alone, we never die alone, and how important it is to understand that again, the day of our death is such an important part of our life. Most of the hospice work we do now is working with the actively dying. It's people who are expected to die within 24 to 48 hours. So we're present with a lot of people who have taken their last breath, and the importance of a family, and particularly understanding the sacredness of that moment, is so important. I don't have any problem saying to a family that this room is filled with deceased relatives and angels. Linda, who's clairvoyant, she can often point out where they are and describe them. And sometimes there's standing room only in those rooms because of the people coming to help those people cross over. And so that's for me, is such a wonderful validation of the miracle that we are participating in. We're seeing the divine in us, and we're seeing the divine in the people that we're assisting. And it's such a magnificent experience, and we'll always be grateful to you, Father, for that experience.
Well, best is yet to come. Anybody have closing comments to make?
I think I'd like to just invite anyone who's watching this. You don't have to be certain. If you just leave room to imagine that you will die and survive your death, and that you will be met by whomever you need, that individual, whether that individual is an ancestor or a helper or an angelic, you're going to get exactly what you need. And it can get better. Even if you got squashed like a bug, it'll get better.
Yeah. Amen. Somebody else?
No one dies alone.
No.
Really grateful to everybody here that we're part of a team that do this amazing work. I'm honored.
We all are.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave it there then. I'm grateful for the work that you do and the friendships that we've developed. But for now, I thank all of you for sharing some time with the audience of the Joyful Friar podcast. That's it for this episode. If you would like to be in touch with me, you can do that through my website, nathan-castle.com. And if you wanted to be in touch with any of these folks, you could do that through the website, and I could forward along your comment or question or anything, and that would be up to them as to what they do with it from there. But for now, thank you for being with us this time. Until next time, God bless you.
God bless.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Joyful Friar. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can visit me at nathan-castle.com. Send me a message by clicking the contact button. God bless.